Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I'll be going over the best books I've read according to Goodreads. I remember the first booktuber I saw do this video was Haley from Haley in Bookland, and I recently saw Eliza and Reagan do it as well, so I'll link their videos below. I think it's really interesting to look at Goodreads average ratings for books, especially books that have a very high average rating and lots of ratings. So the general consensus seems to be that these books are beloved, and I don't know, it's just really interesting to look at these ratings, and especially if you've read the book and everyone seems to love it, but you don't like it as much. And then the flip side as well, when there is a very low average rating, but you end up loving the book. So I just think it's a really interesting thing to look at. And I was looking at the books that I've read with the highest ratings, and some of them I am not surprised to see their average rating so high, and some of them I am surprised. But for this video, I thought I'd go over the books with the highest average rating on Goodreads that I have personally read and see if my thoughts align with the general consensus for these books. If I had just done the top 10 books with the highest rating, I'm pretty sure there would have been only 2 or 3 authors to talk about, because the majority of the books are by one author, and that is Connie Lynn Cassette. She is an amazing Christian fiction author. The thing is, her books have not been read by as many people as other books with very, very high average ratings. And so to be fair, I'm excluding any books with less than 100 reviews or ratings, and I'm also excluding nonfiction. I just feel like that's a whole other thing to be looking at. So I'm excluding nonfiction, excluding books with less than 100 ratings or reviews, and then I'm also grouping authors' works together to count as one. So I'm doing like a top 20 for this video. So in essence, if there are multiple books within a series in this list, they are being counted as one, just the series counts as one. And then if there are multiple series by an author, I'm counting just that author as, one in this list, because there are a lot of books in this list. So I'm not going to go over every single book, but I will mention like the average ratings for the books in the series and then try to get through the list as fast as possible. For fairness, I have a bigger variety of authors, and they're all books that I have read with an average rating between 4.44 and 4.73. 4.73 is the highest on my list. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So at number 1, we have all of Connie Lynn Cassette's books. They are all within this list. They all have very, very high ratings, and they deserve those ratings. This author is just incredible. Her books are incredible. So we have her 3 series. We have the Out from Egypt series, then we have the Cities of Refuge series, and the Covenant House duology. So for the Out from Egypt series, we have books 2 and 3, and they are the ones with a rating between 4.44 up until the highest rating. And these books definitely deserve this average rating. We have Shadow of the Storm at 4.49 and Wings of the Wind at 4.61. And these are just amazing stories surrounding events in the Old Testament, but we have main characters that are not from the Bible. So it's a very, very interesting look at the biblical events of the time, and they 100% deserve these ratings. They're absolutely incredible. And then we have the Cities of Refuge series, and all 4 books in this series have very high ratings. We have A Light on the Hill, which is 4.53. Shelter of the Most High is 4.54. Until the Mountains Fall, 4.64. And Like Flames in the Night, 4.68. And again, Old Testament fiction, just incredible. I have given all of the books that I just mentioned 5 stars. And yeah, it's just absolutely amazing. And then the Covenant House duology, it is Connie Lynn Cassette's newest books, and they're actually my least favorite by her. I still gave the first book, To Dwell Among Cedars, 4 stars, and Between the Wild Branches, 4.5 stars, but I just don't think they were as strong of a story as the previous 2 series that I mentioned. So the average ratings for these books are 4.56 and 4.73, and I do think they deserve a very high rating. I just don't think they're Connie Lynn Cassette's best works. And Between the Wild Branches actually holds the highest average rating out of all the books that I've read. It is a very small audience of people reading these books, so I do understand that the average rating may not hold as much weight as the average rating of let's say, a book with, 20,000 reviews. I completely understand that, but I do think this author is incredible. Next up, we have a middle grade memoir in graphic novel form, and that is When Stars Are Scattered. And this book has an average rating of 4.66, and I personally gave it 4 stars. I didn't really vibe with the art style, but the story itself is so impactful, so powerful, and I definitely think this also deserves its very high rating. And then next we have books 2 and 3 in The Restoration Chronicles by Lynn Austen. And we have a few Lynn Austen books to talk about that all have very high ratings. So book 2 is Keepers of the Covenant, and this has a rating of 4.57. And then On This Foundation is 4.62. And I gave both of these books 5 stars. I read them years and years and years ago, but they're very, very good. They are also Old Testament fiction. And this is set during the time when the Jewish people were exiled in Babylon, around like Nehemiah and Ezra and that time of the Bible. So it's really, really interesting. I'm definitely a fan of Lynn Austen, but for some reason this next book it wasn't my favorite, and a lot of people love it, and I don't know why I didn't love it as much. But the next one is Legacy of Mercy, and this has an average rating of 4.52, and I gave this one 3 stars. I was a little underwhelmed with the story, but I also think it was a case of me having had read too many books with very similar plot structures and just like historical Christian fiction. Sometimes it just gets to be repetitive in terms of themes and everything. So I think I was just reading too much of that at the time, and I just wasn't really in the mood for this book. And so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Maybe I would rate it higher upon a reread because I do think Lynn Austen is a great writer. So 4.52, it's a great average rating. And then with 4.51 stars, we have The Song of Redemption by Lynn Austen again. And this is another biblical fiction set during King Hezekiah's reign, and this one I gave 4 stars to. I definitely think it's a very, very interesting look at King Hezekiah and his life. And so that is it for Lynn Austen. She definitely deserves to have high ratings. She's a great author. And then moving on to one of my favorite authors of all time, we have Francine Rivers, and I don't think anyone would be surprised to see her on this list. Her books are rated very, very highly, and with good reason. So the first 2 books are A Voice in the Wind, which has an average of 4.56, and An Echo in the Darkness, which is 4.61, and I gave both of these books 5 stars. They deserve it. They deserve all the stars. I adore them. And then we also have Redeeming Love, which I also gave 5 stars, and I've read it twice, I think, and it's just absolutely incredible. And this book has an average rating of 4.50, so just incredible. They deserve it for sure. Next, we have a historical fiction that I have been wanting to reread for so long, and every time I see it on my shelves, I just want to pick it up. But there are so many other books I need to get to, so I keep ignoring it, but I definitely need to reread it soon. And that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. And this book was so hyped when it came out, and I still think it deserved it and still deserves to be hyped and loved, and it's just incredible. This book has an average of 4.59. I do apologize that I haven't really organized this video very well. The books are not in order of rating from highest, going down, just because there are so many books from different authors, and I kind of had to figure out a way to organize this video. So sorry for that side tangent. But again, The Nightingale, incredible. Next up, we have Misu Andrews, who is my favorite biblical fiction author of all time. And I'm not going to go over her individual books because the majority of them are very, very highly rated, and they do deserve it, but I'll just quickly list off some of the books. So we have the Prophets and Kings series, Isaiah's Daughter, Isaiah's Legacy, and Of Fire and Lions. They are absolutely incredible. Of Fire and Lions specifically is my favorite book by her thus far. And then we have Pharaoh's Daughter and Miriam, and they are also very, very great stories. So Misu Andrews 100% deserves to be rated as highly as she is. Same story with another one of my favorite biblical fiction authors, Tessa Afshar. All of her books are rated very highly, and again, they deserve it. But specifically, we have Daughter of Rome, Land of Silence, and Harvest of Rubies, and they are amongst her highest rated books. Then we have 2 books in a series by Jill Eileen Smith. It is the Daughters of the Promised Land series, and books 3 and 4 have the highest rating, and they were also my favorite in this series. They are incredible. And so the first one is Redeeming Grace, Ruth's Story, and this has an average of 4.46. 100% deserves it. I gave it 5 stars. I loved this book. And then we have A Passionate Hope, which is Hannah's story. These are also Old Testament biblical fiction, and this has an average of 4.49. Next up, we have Sold into Freedom by Carol Towris. and this has an average of 4.48, but it does only have a few hundred ratings and reviews. And it's not to say that this book isn't good. I think I gave it 4 stars, but it's not the best biblical fiction I've read out there. And so I feel like that average may be different if more people were to read this book. So I did say at the beginning of the video that I would not include any nonfiction, but I'm counting this one because to me, I don't like thinking of it as nonfiction. It's a story in and of itself. And it's a story of nature and its beauty. And that is The Lost Spells by Robert Macfarlane. This is a very, very small collection of poetry with some of the most beautiful watercolor art I've ever seen, and I am obsessed. It has an average of 4.54, and it deserves to have an average of 5.0. This book is just a work of art, and I'm obsessed with it. And I keep finding myself flipping through the pages because I need to look at that artwork. It's just stunning. So this deserves it for sure. Then we have a book that I just recently read, and that is Spy Family Volume 1 with an average of 4.54. I don't need to say anything else. It's Spy Family. It's amazing. Next, we have one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, and oh my goodness, each of these books. I want to include this entire series in this video, but only books 1 and 3 are above a 4.44 average rating, so I am just going to include those two. So the first book is The Final Empire, and then the third book is The Hero of Ages, and they were tied for my favorite in this series. The middle book, I still gave 5 stars, but it did slog a little bit. So books 1 and 3, 100% deserve their high average rating. I think anything by Brandon Sanderson deserves a high average. I love these books so much. Then we have a book that I don't think I've ever talked about on my channel, and that is Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the third book in the Winter Night trilogy, and it is just such a captivating story. Like this entire trilogy, but this book in particular, it blew me away. It has an average of 4.5 on Goodreads, and 100% deserves that rating. It is just amazing. So this trilogy is set in Russia in the medieval era, and it is set during a time where a lot more people were following orthodoxy, but there was still a lot of superstition, and like people were still following the old ways, and you had all this folklore with different creatures. And like the overarching, I guess, premise of this trilogy is this teenager named Vasya. She is in tune with the different mythical creatures in her land, and she is kind of fighting evil in a sense. Like there's so much more to this story, but it's so atmospheric and perfect to read in the winter. If you ever read it, do read it in the winter. It's the best time to read it. You will feel the cold in your bones. It's just amazing. I do struggle a little bit and try to stay away from super witchy books. They're not things that I personally like. And this book was, right at kind of my limit. But as a book, it's absolutely amazing. It's also spooky at times, but not too scary. So just wanted to put that out there. Then we have A Note Yet Unsung by Tamara Alexander, and this has an average of 4.48. It is book 3 in the Belmont Mansion trilogy, and it is so good. This one was my favorite in the trilogy for sure. It has to do with classical music and everything, and the characters were just beautifully drawn out, and I definitely love this book. Another Tamara Alexander book we also have With This Pledge, and this has an average of 4.45. And this one I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars if I'm not mistaken. I was really bogged down by the wartime jargon because the majority of the book is set in a person's home that is kind of set up as a convalescent hospital in a way during the Civil War in America. And it was very morbid, and there was just a lot of like death, and it was very depressing, but it is a very impactful book. So the average rating of 4.45, it definitely deserves that. And then books 2 and 3 in one of my favorite trilogies of all time, we have A Song Unheard by Rosanna M. White with 4.45 and An Hour Unspent with 4.47. And these two books are just so good. I gave every book in this trilogy 5 stars. I think so far out of the books I've read by Rosanna M. White, they are the best so far. I do have a few more series to read by her, but I definitely think these books deserve their rating. Then we have 2 manga books, and I gave 4 stars to the both of them. We have Yona of the Dawn, volumes 1 and 2. And I thought they were really cute, but there were just some aspects of the stories that I felt a little weird about, so they weren't the best, but I do think they are really sweet. And both volumes have an average of 4.45. Next up we have I Must Betray You by Rita Sepetys, and this also has 4.45 as its average. And I gave this one 4 stars. It's not my favorite Rita Sepetys that I've read so far. I just think that besides the amazing plot and the setting and just Rita's ability to write historical fiction, I think the character development was lacking. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about its high average, but I do think it's a really, really good book. Another book with an average of 4.45 is The Man Who Died Twice, and this is book 2 in the Thursday Murder Club series, which I am falling in love with. I have only given books 1 and 2 4 stars, but in my books, 4 stars is great. It doesn't mean that I didn't like the book. I really, really liked it, but something was missing. So it didn't quite hit the 5-star mark for me, but I do think that Richard Osman writes an awesome cozy mystery, and I love this series so far. We have another manga, and this one is Wolf Children, which I also gave 4 stars to, and I thought this one was so cute. This one is just a feel-good, but at the same time emotional manga story, and I think it deserves its 4.44 average rating. I think it's very, very sweet. All right, in spot number 20, we have Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor, another favorite fantasy book of all time. This book was just a work of art. And this also has an average of 4.44, and it 100% deserves that. It is such a good story. It is a slower paced book, same with the first book, but it captured my heart. It's beautiful and I love it. All right, so those are the books on Goodreads with the highest average rating that I have read. And if you have read any of these books and agree that they deserve those average ratings, please let me know. And if you disagree, tell me why you disagree. If they are books that you have not enjoyed, I would love to know why and continue talking about them in the comments. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye!